Sergeant Eli Vance wasn't supposed to land alone. His drop pod had been part of a larger deployment, a precision operation aimed at establishing a forward base on the jungle moon of Virix 9, a contested, toxic-rich world in the middle of United Terran and Vatari Dominion territory. But space never cooperated with human plans. One unexpected EMP blast from a Vatari cruiser shattered formation mid-drop, and Eli's pod spiraled away from his unit. The world below swallowed him like a predator. When the pod's hatch finally cracked open, smoke billowed out into dense, humid air. Eli coughed and staggered out, his body aching from impact, his HUD flashing critical alerts comes offline, minor leg fracture, pulse rifle partially operational. Around him, alien jungle stretched out endlessly. Every plant seemed to glow, breathe, or move on its own. Trees the width of buildings towered over vines thick as hoses. A chorus of alien chirps and howls rang out, but none close. Still he was alone. And in enemy territory, Eli limped through the underbrush, pulse rifle half-raised, instincts sharp. He was no elite super soldier, just a field medic turned sergeant, known more for keeping men alive than for winning medals. But solitude sharpened the mind and pain dulled fear. He knew he had to find high ground and possibly signal his squad if they were even still alive. But the jungle had other plans. Hours in, he heard the sound. A rustling, no, something heavier. A series of thuds, rhythmic and steady, like the heartbeat of a god. Vines parted ahead. And then she stepped through 10 feet tall. Dark, stone-like skin with faint bioluminescent veins running beneath the surface. Armor made of layered scales and bone plating, scorched and cracked. Her cyan eyes locked on Eli with the precision of a predator. A large, double-headed energy lance dangled from her right hand, its blade tip glowing faintly. Eli froze. His first instinct was to raise the rifle, but logic overruled panic. He'd seen what Vatari warriors could do. Speed, power, reflexes far beyond a human's. If she wanted him dead, he already would be. Then he saw blood. Thick, tar-like, oozing down her side from a gash beneath her armor. Her left leg trembled. She was hurt. Badly. They stared at one another, enemies by uniform, by blood, by generations of warfare. And yet neither moved. Eli's training kicked in. He slowly lowered his rifle, slid it into the sling across his back, and held up his hands. "You're bleeding," he said, voice calm, slow. "I'm not gonna hurt you." Her eyes narrowed. Unblinking, he pointed to her wound, then gently reached into his side pouch and removed a bandage roll. She tensed but didn't attack. She seemed puzzled. "I'm a medic," Eli said softly. "It's what I do." For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick as the fog drifting through the jungle. Then, without warning, her legs buckled. She collapsed. Eli dashed forward, catching her head just before it struck a root. Her skin was hot to the touch, her breathing shallow. Her enormous weight pushed him nearly to the ground, but he grunted and adjusted. He saw signs of internal trauma. Infection, maybe. Her blood was thickening. Against every regulation in the Terran military protocol, he dragged her into a hollowed-out tree, away from predators and the elements. He built a small fire, sterilized his tools, and began treating the wound. She didn't wake for hours. Eli didn't sleep at all. When she finally opened her eyes, they glowed brighter in the firelight. She scanned the space, her gaze locking on Eli. Her hand twitched toward the weapon nearby, but didn't reach it. She groaned. He placed a finger to his lips. "You passed out. You lost a lot of blood." Her mouth moved slowly. "Why? Help?" Eli paused, then shrugged. "Because no one else would." The alien stared at him for a long while. Then, in broken Terran standard, she said, "You, not like others." She extended one massive hand and touched her chest. "Jura." Eli nodded. "I'm Eli." That was the moment it began, not with diplomacy, not with orders or treaties, but with a medic choosing compassion over protocol and an alien warrior too injured to hate. By the second sunrise on Varix 9, the jungle no longer felt like enemy territory. It felt still dangerous, yes, but different. Sergeant Eli Vance had stopped seeing the alien flora as mere obstacles. Now he noted which berries glowed from internal heat, which trees dripped water from their leaves. And beside him, limping but recovering, was Jura the Vatari warrior who should have been his executioner. Instead, they were now traveling together. And with each hour that passed, the line between enemy and ally blurred. Jura's wound had stabilized, thanks to Eli's medical fieldwork and sheer persistence. Her alien physiology had initially fought the human antibiotics, but Eli figured out how to adjust doses and time injections to match her healing cycle. Her resilience impressed him. He'd seen humans nearly die from wounds half as deep. She, meanwhile, hardly flinched even as he stitched her side. Though still cautious, Jura had started speaking more. Her words were clipped, broken Terran standard, but she was a quick learner. She told Eli she was part of the Sharkai, an elite Vatari legion known not only for strength but for honor, a word she repeated often, as if it meant more than life itself. Eli listened at night when the jungle came alive with screeches. And low, rumbling growls, they built a fire between them and shared meals. Eli offered his last few MREs. Jura grimaced at the processed paste, though she did appreciate the beef-flavored protein cubes. In return, she taught him how to safely gut and cook one of the horned lizard creatures they caught. He named it Spiky Jim. She found that oddly funny. They weren't friends, not yet, but they weren't enemies either. One afternoon, while collecting edible roots, Eli noticed Jura standing still, face turned toward the wind. She sniffed the air. Then she clicked her tongue softly, a sound he'd heard her make during night watches. "Vatari scouts?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." "Hunter beasts? Big? Coming." She handed him her second blade, roughly the size of a machete. It was too heavy for him to swing properly, but he took it. Because despite her immense strength, Jura was sharing more than a weapon. She was beginning to trust him. That night, they were attacked. 3 grunlocks, 6-limbed predators with translucent fangs and black eyes, burst from the jungle's edge. Jura roared and leapt into battle, swinging her lance with brutal precision. Eli fired carefully, aiming for their throats. One creature charged him, and he barely dodged its strike. Jura tackled it mid-lunge, crushing its chest with a single downward blow. The fight lasted barely a minute. But afterward, Eli realized something. He hadn't felt fear. He'd fought back-to-back with a towering alien warrior. And for once, he didn't feel alone. Later, tending her fresh claw marks, he muttered, "Remind me to never fight you, Jura." She gave him a toothy grin, of Atari smile, wide and fierce. "You would lose," he laughed. "No doubt." Then she added, more softly, "But I not want fight you." The words hung in the air. Not just because of what she said, but how. She said it. She didn't want to fight him. Eli glanced up from his bandages. "Yeah, I don't want to fight you either." They sat in silence for a long moment, lit only by the flickering fire and jungle glow beetles flitting above. Jura finally spoke again. "My people say, bond is made in blood, not words." Eli's brow furrowed. "You mean like an oath?" She shook her head slowly. "Not oath, not command, a choice. Life tie, warrior to warrior." Eli swallowed. "And are we bonded?" Jura didn't answer directly. Instead, she reached into her belt pouch and retrieved a thin metallic thread, a pie. Vatari warrior token, braided from battlefield debris. She pressed it into his hand. He stared at it. A gift, a symbol. A choice. In that moment, Eli understood. They were more than allies. They were something the war had never prepared him for. A bond between two warriors who should have hated each other, but didn't. By the time the Terran recon team finally found him, Eli had nearly forgotten what human voices sounded like. He and Jura had survived 12 days together on Varex 9, navigating both the jungle's dangers and each other's scars. Their strange bond had evolved into something solid, more than friendship, more than survival. They trained together, fought together, and shared things only soldiers could understand. Trauma, loyalty, purpose. But even bonds forged in fire are fragile in the wrong hands. It happened during a routine forage run near a riverbed. Eli spotted the drone first, a Terran recon model, circling overhead. It didn't fire, but its red sensor light blinked rapidly. Seconds later, a transport shuttle sliced through the clouds and dropped into the clearing, kicking up dirt and leaves. Eli turned to Jura. Time to meet the family. She said nothing, her massive form already tense. A full squad of Terran soldiers disembarked, 8 of them, armored and alert, led by a sharp-featured lieutenant named Marcus Reeve. His eyes locked on Eli, then on the towering Vatari warrior behind him. Sergeant Vance. Reeve barked. You're alive? Eli nodded slowly. Mostly. The soldiers formed a half-circle, weapons raised, not firing, but not relaxed either. Jura remained still, though her hand twitched near her lance. Reeve pointed. That thing. Behind you. It's Vatari. She has a name, Eli replied calmly. Jura. Is this a prisoner situation? No, she's not a prisoner. Then explain to me why you're standing next to the enemy and not under her boot. Eli inhaled deeply. Because she saved my life. And I saved hers. We've been surviving together for almost 2 weeks. Reeve's expression twisted. You bonded with it? Eli didn't blink. With her. Murmurs broke out among the Terran soldiers. Some lowered their weapons slightly, confused. Others looked downright uncomfortable. The tension was thick enough to slice with a blade. Jura stayed quiet, but Eli could feel her heartbeat strong, steady, ready for violence if it came to that. Reeve scowled. You've gone native, Vance. That's treason. Eli's voice grew harder. It's humanity. You think every alien is the same just because their skin looks different from ours? She's a killer. So am I, Eli snapped. You think I haven't put bullets through Vatari? I have, plenty. But this war has been going on for decades and no one's asking why anymore. Jura did. She wants peace. Reeve raised his rifle. She's not your decision to make. But before he could give the command, another voice called out from behind the line. Private Nessa Cole, a young recon trooper, barely 19, hesitated. Sir, he's Sergeant Vance. Saved my brother on Urka 5. If he says the alien's not a threat, Reeve cut her off. This isn't about trust, Private. It's about protocol. But others began lowering their weapons, uncertain. Something about Eli's presence, his calm in the face of Reeve's fury and Jura's restraint, was changing minds in real time. Jura stepped forward slightly. One soldier reflexively raised his rifle, but Eli raised a hand to stop him. Jura spoke, her deep voice carrying clearly. I could kill all. Fast. But I do not. Why? She looked around the humans, then pointed at Eli. Because this one chose bond, and I choose honor. The jungle fell silent. Even Reeve hesitated. The wind knocked out of his authority. He was staring at a 10-foot Deathworld warrior who had just declared peace in front of his entire unit and hadn't flinched once. Finally, Eli turned to him. "You can arrest me if you want, court-martial me. But know this Jura has shown more courage and restraint than half the command staff." Back home, silence. Then Nesacol stepped forward. "Sir, if the enemy wants to talk instead of fight, maybe we should listen." One by one, the soldiers began lowering their rifles. Reeve gritted his teeth. "This is a mistake." "No," Eli said, stepping beside Jura. "This is a beginning." The shuttle didn't fire. Jura wasn't taken in chains. Instead, they were both transported not to a cell, but to a temporary command outpost on the edge of the jungle. Questions swirled. Cameras recorded. Reports were filed, but one thing became clear. The image went viral across both sides of the war. A grainy field recording showed a Terran soldier Sergeant Eli Vance standing side by side with a towering Vatari warrior. Jura, no chains, no blasters, just quiet defiance and something that looked dangerously like mutual respect. It didn't take long for the story to explode. On Terran networks, some hailed Eli as a visionary. Others called him a traitor. Among the Vatari, Jura's appearance with a human was nothing short of heresy, but it stirred ancient codes of honor in older warriors. Codes that spoke of bonds that transcended war. Neither Jura nor Eli had intended to start a movement. They simply told the truth. After their extraction from Verix 9, they were brought separately to a neutral command station orbiting a dead planet, a place so politically irrelevant that both sides agreed to let it serve as common ground. There, Terran diplomats in stiff uniforms met with Vatari emissaries covered in ceremonial bone armor. The air was thick with tension. But in the center of that storm sat two warriors. Eli and Jura were not diplomats. They didn't speak with scripts or careful wording. They spoke plainly, honestly, and that honesty did what years of peace talks could not. It pierced the armor of prejudice. In the first private session, Jura stood before the Vatari High Matron, the matriarchal leader of her people. The room was cavernous, with pillars carved in ancient stone, brought aboard by Vatari ships like sacred relics. Jura knelt before her and spoke in deep tones, every word echoing across the chamber. "I once believed the humans were beasts," Jura sighed. "I bled for that belief, killed for it, but one bled for me. He mended my wounds, shared his fire, his food, his silence. He gave me a bond, and that bond held more strength than 1,000 battles." There was a long pause before the High Matron replied, "Do you love this human?" She asked, a dangerous question in Vatari culture, one that implied the possibility of shame or exile. Jura did not blink. "I respect him. I would die for him. If that is love, then so be it." Meanwhile, Eli was facing a room full of Terran brass, arms crossed, eyes full of doubt. "You can't seriously expect us to believe that bonding with an enemy warrior is the path to peace." One general scoffed. "I'm not asking you to believe it," Eli replied. "I'm telling you it happened. And it worked. She had a dozen chances to kill me. She didn't. We talked. We survived together, and we found a reason to stop fighting." Another officer asked, "Why her? Why not any of the hundreds of others we've captured?" Eli shrugged. "Because she made the same choice I did." That answer stuck. Soon, more neutral zones were established, tiny embers of diplomacy, fanned into flame by the strange alliance between two warriors who should have hated each other. Younger soldiers on both sides began asking questions there. Leaders didn't like, "Why are we still fighting? What did this war even start over?" Jura and Eli were asked to appear together before a joint audience of Terran and Vatari media. It was risky. A single assassination attempt could restart the war. But they agreed. The stage was sterile, the lighting clinical. Yet when Jura walked out and stood behind the podium beside Eli, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Eli spoke first. I didn't plan any of this. I was just trying to survive, and I found someone else trying to do the same. Jura's deep voice followed. I was raised to crush, to dominate. I was told humans were poison, but this one gave. Instead of taking, he broke no rules, only expectations. A silence followed. Then applause from both species. Back on the Vitari homeworld, warrior clans began requesting peace discussions. On Earth, anti-war protests were replaced with unity marches, many of them carrying signs that read, "Bond beyond blood." Jura and Eli's bond became more than personal, it became political. Symbolic, dangerous, necessary. But the greatest change was yet to come. One morning, weeks later, Jura stood on a terrace overlooking the Terran Vitari negotiation dome. She watched the sunrise, a rare shared horizon between two species. Eli joined her quietly. Still think it was a mistake? He asked. Jura rumbled low in her chest. No, this was our war. Now it's our peace. They didn't hold hands. They didn't need to. The war did not end in a blaze of glory. There were no grand surrender ceremonies, no galaxy-spanning declarations. It ended in fragments, pauses between skirmishes, ships recalling fire orders, ceasefire zones becoming permanent, and generals retiring instead of retaliating. But at the center of the unraveling war stood two individuals whose quiet defiance had sparked something bigger. Sergeant Eli Vance, the Terran soldier, and Jura of the Sharkai, the Vitari warrior, their bond impossible, improbable, undeniable, had become a symbol, a crack in the wall of hatred. And from that crack, light poured in. After the Unity Accords were signed on neutral station Eos, Eli and Jura were offered command positions in the newly formed interspecies Peace Corps. Both declined. Command is for those who want control, Eli said. I want to build something. And build they did, together. They founded the Bastion program, an initiative designed to train mixed-species squads in diplomacy, field survival, and cross-cultural conflict resolution. What began as a single experiment with 20 handpicked recruits grew into a model adopted by dozens of fringe colonies. Human and Vitari soldiers trained together, lived together, and in some cases, bonded just like their founders had. Jura took to teaching like a natural war master. Her voice, commanding and fierce, echoed in training domes as she pushed cadets to their limits. But she also taught restraint, patience, and respect, virtues once thought foreign to her people. Strength is not breaking your foe, she often told her students. It is choosing not to. Eli, meanwhile, taught tactics, medicine, and most surprisingly, humor. If you can't laugh during a mission, you're probably dead already, he often joked, drawing amused reactions even from the most stoic Vat-Ari. Their partnership wasn't without challenges. Political extremists on both sides called them traitors, blasphemers, or worse. Assassination attempts were made none successful, thanks in part to Jura's unwavering instincts and Eli's stubborn refusal to die. Through it all, they never wavered. One evening, years after Varix 9, a memorial ceremony was held in their honor. Not to mark their deaths, but to celebrate the beginning of a peace born from blood and trust. A statue was unveiled at Unity Plaza, showing two warriors standing side by side. Not victorious, not armed, just together. The inscription read, "They could have been enemies. They chose to be more." That night, after the crowds had faded and speeches were done, Eli and Jura stood beneath the stars alone. It feels strange, Eli said, watching distant ships pass overhead. All this from a chance meeting. Jura tilted her head. Not chance, choice. He smiled at that. Yeah, Guess you're right. She looked down at him. I was taught to hate your kind. Every breath I took in battle was laced with it. Then you showed me something I was never trained to face. What's that? Kindness. Eli's smile faltered into something softer. I didn't think twice. I saw someone bleeding. I helped. Doesn't seem like heroism to me. It is, she said, because you could have walked away. They stood in silence for a long time. Two figures from different worlds, now bonded beyond politics, beyond orders. Eli finally spoke. Do you ever think about what might have happened if we hadn't met out there in the jungle? Jura didn't hesitate. A galaxy would still be burning. She knelt beside him, not as a warrior before a superior, but as an equal, making space between them. She reached into her belt and retrieved a second warrior's token woven from metal and bone. She had worn it since the day of their first true fight together. I offer this, she said quietly, not as Vatari, but as your kind says, as family. Eli took it in trembling hands. I'll carry it always. There were no vows. No fanfare. Just an understanding. Though, their species might one day clash again. Though peace could fracture and old wounds reopen, this bond would endure. They had started as enemies, became allies. And ended as something far greater.